speaking of the good and bad and the ugly of modern day, that's one of the things that I see that so many modern day hunters don't get any kind of experience like that in this world we live in. Everything's so fast paced today, and you can go to Bass Pro and buy get a bow set up, or go to an archery pro shop and get yourself a bow and be set up shooting the next day and
Mhm.
hunting the day after that. And
Yeah.
these guys, the learning experience, the learning curve that you and I went through as growing up as boys, learning how to shoot and learning respect for the animals and woodsmanship and just the pure education when we had a father or a grandfather or someone who taught us. And today, there's so much of that that's lacking.
I agree with you on the fact that nowadays the kids aren't getting the education with learning about their surroundings, learning about how to hunt and how to shoot, whether it's bow or gun, or even just learning the life cycles of the wildlife. What you were talking about, that how today the focus is maybe not so much on providing game and whatnot. It's focused somewhere else. So I think that we as hunters, I'm middle aged, I guess you'd call it, and I take upon myself to find youth hunters that want to learn that maybe their parents have never been taught how to do it. And I find that passing that knowledge on, there is a hunger for it. They just don't know it.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. If you put any boy in this world, if you put a BB gun in his hand, I mean, his face brightens up and his whole attitude changes. I mean, there's not a boy in this world who doesn't want to shoot a BB gun.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of youngsters these days, boys and girls, never get the chance.
Mm-hmm.
But if they do, they love it. And that's, so many people I know, including me, you started out with a BB gun when we were smaller, and then we graduated to a 22 and started shooting, little, maybe hunting squirrels and things like that. And then eventually you graduate to a deer rifle or a big game, some kind of big game rifle or shotgun for birds. And it's just that evolution is so, when you think back and, look back at a childhood like mine, it's just so important and so meaningful in my life to have done all that before I actually started deer hunting.
You got to start them. We start them here a lot on turkeys, with the kids, because turkey hunting is interactive. It's exciting. When you get a gobbler coming in and he's making all that noise, the kids' hearts are pounding. It's exciting. And it's a fairly easy hunt for kids. And we have a half a day of hunting. So you get the kid out there early in the morning, you hunt till noon, then he can go and do other stuff. So you don't burn them out. Like deer hunting, the way I do it, the kid would probably not want to deer hunt ever again. So turkeys are a good way to start them. And I think luckily we have a lot of people here in the state with the NWTF and everything that are willing to teach these boys. It would be nice to have a program, or girls, I shouldn't say boys, because my daughter did it. My friend James Smith, his daughter is getting into turkey hunting and deer hunting, and she's just a wee little thing. So it's nice to see people doing it. It would be nice to have an actual organized program to do it. And it's funny in today's world because there's so much stuff that parents worry about making sure, and we hear it whether it's the Boy Scouts or whether it's anything else. There's a lot of political upheaval, not to mention there's all kinds of you have a lot of people who are sexual, predators that get involved in this stuff, and parents are afraid to allow their children to go with somebody. If there was an organization that would really, and we know what happens, you get these organizations, they don't really vet anybody, they don't check anybody out, they put them out there, and then your kid is in some type of danger. If there was an actual organization that did vetting, made sure everybody was right, even if they had to do it in a group setting to teach these boys, I think that would be an asset to getting people to the point where they realize that getting food from the wild is healthy and it's natural.
That is so true. That is so true. And that's a great idea. And it's got, I have neighbors. I live in a neighborhood in a subdivision, and I have one my next door neighbors are two young men who are in their early teens. They both 14 and 15 now, just became teenagers recently. And they started out as Cub Scouts, and they love their Cub Scout troop. They've been progressing along for the last few years. But I just found out recently their Cub Scout and Boy Scout troop does not have any kind of shooting program at all. And again, when I was growing up, Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, and if you went to any kind of summer camp, there was always some kind of 22 rifle or at least a Daisy program. And I was just thinking the other day, that would be something to contact, be a great, something good to contact this Boy Scout troop and offer to, bring some Daisy BB guns over one day and when they're having a meeting and do some shooting and just introduce them to the boys next door. They've been shooting with me a lot and just in the backyard. But again, so many youngsters these days are so many families are so detached from nature and from being outside and outdoors. And we talk about hunting. Our love is hunting, but just enjoying nature and birds. Watching birds and watching the birds nest in the spring and seeing the spring renewal when you get out turkey hunting, especially when everything starts greening up, and you just see so many amazing things out in nature when you're out. And yet so many youngsters these days don't ever get the chance to do that because
I'm wondering, do you think that it's because of the children aren't interested, or is it because they've never been exposed to it? Because I almost find that the kids are open to it, at least in some respect, but whether it's they've just never had it offered to them. Do you think it's?
I think that's true. Yeah, I think it just because of just the lifestyles that we see today in so many places, so many urban areas, that they're never exposed to that. The parents may be bicyclists, or they may do some runners, or they may have some outdoor things that they do, but they don't hunt and they don't take their kids. The kids are never exposed to shooting, to hunting. I've had kids in my neighborhood. I shoot in my bow in my backyard. I have a couple of children's bows that I always keep handy, and the kids come up and say, well, man, can I watch you shoot? And I said, well, you can shoot with me if you want to, because I've got a couple of bows. And I had one a few years ago, about 10 years ago, we had some neighbors, and the little boy came over. He was fascinated, and he got to shoot a recurve bow for the first time and hit the target. And then later on, his mother found out, and she was furious at me because she claimed that I was doing something that was dangerous with her son. And she wouldn't let him come over and shoot anymore. Those kind of attitudes are just hard to explain.
It's funny because a lot of those attitudes are from people who are uneducated about what the actual activity is. They don't understand that there's a safety aspect to it. And I've always found with children that if you force them to hunt all the time, or you force them to fish at a young age, take them all the time and make them stay too long and all this other thing, it shuts them down. But the more you keep a kid from doing something like that he wants, the more the fire burns in there, and it's going to cause a problem. So say your boy or girl wants to shoot a rifle, shoot a pistol, shoot a BB gun, and you say no, no, no. Eventually they're going to find an avenue to get to that, and they may do it in an unsafe manner. By having these activities, they're under control, they're being supervised, and it's a safe way to do it. and they can finally get that fire quenched, so there's not this crazy drive for it.
Absolutely, and they learn it the right way. They learn, firearm safety and how to handle a gun properly. And once you start learning that from an early age, that stays with you forever. And so that is so important.
I know when I was in the Army and they were teaching you gun safety, you learned it the hard way. You did something unsafe, you got a bat upside the head. You can do it a lot easier with kids. You don't have to do that. But it on the other hand, doing that, it also works. Say, I've always told I made the mistake with myself, with my nephew and my daughter, was I am such a fanatic that they would go with me. And like I said, they'd be out all day, they'd get sick of it. And I keep doing it. And now neither of them are. My daughter would hunt. She's got her license and everything, but for her to do it now, that it doesn't have that drive. And, so I think that if with me, my problem was my dad didn't hunt. He didn't fish very much. So when I wanted to go all the time, they'd always said no. And it just fueled that fire. So eventually, so that's the good part of doing that with child psychology, is you can build that fire in the kid for good if you do it the right way. So either way, there's a way to feed that fire or quench it in a good way. And I think more parents, if the parents aren't into it, find somebody that is willing to help your child do these things, or take a class. A lot of times you'll see in the hunter safety course, you're going to see a dad and a son. Even though the dad's taking the hunter safety course, he's there with his kid. He's taking it again. It builds a bond between the children and the parent.
Yeah, that's so true. That's very important.
And without us doing these things, these kids aren't going to keep taking this flag up for us and running forward with it. And this sport and this lifestyle that we have is going to die eventually. It's slowly but surely going to fizzle out unless somebody.
You have to wonder. I mean, we look at our heritage and we have just such a rich heritage going back to colonial days. And that's one thing I write about so much in Dawn of American Deer Hunting. And so much of the hunting back in the 1700s and the colonial days was subsistence hunting. Those people hunted for food. They had to, food and clothing. But still, there was always a thrill of hunting, being successful, shooting a deer, a bear, whatever, and making a good shot and bringing home the meat. And so more than just subsistence, more than just putting food on the table, there was to most men who were hunters back in those days, it was such a thrill to be able to just get out and match wits with a wild animal like a deer, and then finally bring a deer home and to put on the table.
Not only that, but I think it also there's a sense of pride being able to do that and feed people. Your skills are at that level where you're keeping people alive. You're bringing this food so people stay alive. And I think that also, people like Daniel Boone, David Crockett, that's what they did. They hunted to bring food to people and to keep people alive. So that alone is something that people should take pride in when they're hunting and they do get an animal. And this is something that we need to instill into our kids, that this is something that at some point in time in the future, given the way things look like they go all the time, to be able to make sure that you're a self-sufficient person, you need to be able to have these skills. And without people like us teaching and showing how to do it, we're going to lose it. And then we're going to be in this shape as a lot of these European countries where people have a problem and then they go hungry because they can't figure out how to do anything. We're Americans, for God's sakes. This is what we're supposed to do.
I think you're so right. Just so right. And those and not just hunting skills, but to teach, to get kids outside in nature. I mean, hunting is the ultimate high for me when I'm out. I love the turkey hunt. I love the deer hunt. I'm really excited about turkey season is coming up in a couple of weeks here in Georgia, and I'm getting ready. And to take a kid out or to take young people out is so important. But so many kids just these days they never get those kind of opportunities, and they don't get out in nature at all. Even the Cub Scouts, as I was talking about, they don't really teach a lot of nature study and woodsmanship skills. I mean, back in the dark ages when I was growing up, I had all these books on how to build a fire out in the woods and how to do this and how to make a lean-to and how to survive overnight and the things you do, how to clean water, how to clean a rabbit. So many things like that, skills that you wanted to learn, and most youngsters are really, really want to. If they're exposed to it, they want to do it. They want to do it. They want to continue doing it. They've just got to have the opportunity.
In my collection of odds and ends, I have an old Boy Scouts hatchet out there. Do you think that they even have those anymore?
A Boy Scout what?
It's a hatchet. It has Boy Scouts of America on it. It's just this little lightweight. It's actually really sharp, but it's a nice little hatchet. And I wonder if they even have those anymore.
I don't know, but I think I think scouting has changed so much with the times. I think they've modernized so much with the times, and they go on trips. I know they go on campouts and things like that, but still there's a lot left that they could be doing. And there are groups that are trying to do that with youngsters all over. I mean, I know in Georgia there are several groups that take young people hunting, several youth groups like you were talking about, that have deer hunts every year, and they try to take especially kids who have never been exposed to hunting before, and they go through a day or two of training and gun safety, and then they actually go out and hunt. And that we just need so much more of that. And kids love that and they appreciate it, and I think they develop a respect for the animal too if they're taught those kind of things. That's one of my pet peeves today is when you watch a lot of these TV shows that are on, nobody seems to have a respect for the animal anymore. And when if you kill a squirrel even, or you're rabbit hunting, but a deer, something as large as a deer, it's really a sacred act when you take a life like that, and it's something that animal deserves respect. And we all read about how the Indians would say a prayer. They would, if they killed a deer, they'd thank the Great Spirit for giving them that deer so they could feed their family. And I just think there's so many, that kind of respect is not being taught these days. That's something that I really see. I see some of these shows where these guys, they shoot a deer and they start laughing and high-fiving, and I'm not saying they shouldn't be excited. It's an exciting thing to shoot a deer anytime you can do it, but they make it, sound like they just hit a home run or hit a hole-in-one on the golf course or something. And taking a life like a deer is totally different than playing golf or hitting a baseball.
Yeah. You're killing something. You're taking one of God's creations. And you're extinguishing its life force. And I share that pet peeve. And that's one of the things that when I started filming years ago, one of the rules I had where there were certain things you were not allowed to say on the screen. And one of them was, I smoked him. I whacked him. I did all this stuff. And there's none of this great celebration until after that solemn moment where you shared the respect to that animal and say your prayer and say the thanks to the Almighty that you did it. And then you can be happy after that God has provided you with this animal that you killed. But I agree with you. This is the biggest thing that I have a problem with today's, not so much on the YouTube. I don't see a ton of it there. There's a lot of the guys on there that are really good. But this goes into what I want to get into is it's the commercial shows that you see on some of these outdoor networks of these guys that they've killed so many deer that they've lost the respect for the animal. And the problem I have is there's a lot of younger guys that I deal with and I talk to that think that these guys are heroes and they're just all this great because they've shot 86,000 deer and all these big booners and everything. But when I see them do it, they are disrespectful. And if they want to call me out on it, they can, but they're dirt bags as far as I'm concerned, because I understand that there's a production point of it with doing a TV show, but it's disrespectful and it's not what hunting is about. Yeah. Yes, we're here to kill something, but we need to show respect to that animal.
Oh, absolutely. And I just think these type hunters never grew up being taught that you go out and respect the animal like that. And I think that's one of the things back 100 years ago when dawn of American deer hunting, all those guys in those photos, they respected the animals so much, and they worked hard too. They suffered out there because they were in the snow and the cold, and they didn't have all this great gear, and they didn't have warm shooting houses that they could sit in. And I mean, they went out there and did it the hard way, and they deserve if they got a deer, they really earned it. And they respected so much their fellow hunters, and yeah, they celebrated, the hunt, but it wasn't like this, like I said, hitting a home run or making a touchdown or something. It's totally different, and I think I'd like to see some of these people on some of these shows have a little more respect for the game that they.
I agree. Let's talk about the commercialism that's out there with hunting today and see where you fall on that, because you were in the industry, you were North American Whitetail, and you know that magazines, they sell their copies, but their money really comes from the advertising. Am I correct?
Most of their revenues do come from advertising, yes.
Yeah. So obviously the companies with the money that make the ads, they put them in the magazine. Now, when you were doing that, was there any way of vetting whether or not the product was real, it was truthful, it did what it said?
Well, when I was editor, I became editor of North American Whitetail in 2004. And at that time, and before that, I had been a freelance writer, had written for them quite a bit over the years. And they never, the editorial department, the storytelling department part of it, or the editor who assigned stories and took stories, would never intentionally promote products like they're doing today. They were totally different. The editorial department was totally away from the advertising department, and you hoped that, if you were shooting a Remington rifle, you hoped that maybe Remington would be advertising in that issue, or if you're writing the story. But there were very, very few times where products were deliberately promoted because of advertisers. And then as time developed, we saw that. And after I was there for a few years, some of the powers to be started coming to me and saying, okay, look, you're gonna have to start writing. We want you to write a story about this certain trail camera or this certain game call company, and tell the people how great the game call is. And I kind of argued with that point. I said, well, we've never done that before at North American Whitetail. If a guy kills a big deer and we're doing a story about him, and he says, I was using a Ruger rifle and I was using Nikon binoculars, we'd gladly put that in the story. But we don't just, every third word is not, the type bullet he was using and the type scope he was using and the scent he was using. But it's gotten to that, and on TV especially, and a lot of print media as well. And over the years, it developed. They started doing that more and more with North American Whitetail, and telling the editorial department that, okay, you're going to have to write a story in the September issue about how great these trail cameras are, or something like that.
Yeah. So that's
commercialization. The money talks.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because when North American Whitetail started, people were just hard hunters. You know, everybody had a thirst for learning how to hunt, and people wanted to hunt trophy bucks, get bigger, you know, shoot nicer deer. And the stories in North American Whitetail, of course, were about the biggest deer killed every year in North America and the United States and Canada. And so that, you know, that aspect of it lasted through the 90s, and then the TV shows started up and videos started coming out, and you saw there was kind of a change um, in the way things were viewed. And I think, you know, the commercialism really started coming in about that time with the videos and the TV shows.
Mm-hmm.
And that really, you know, put a lot of commercial, you know, the money on the table there.
Yep.
So, and then you know, going into the early 2000s, and even, you know, the last 20 years, you look at how far we've come, and look, I mean, there's been huge increases in technology and these trail cameras now that you can, you know, you can set up these cameras, and if a deer walks by one of your cameras, your phone beeps, and you can look at it, watch it on your phone. And I mean, there's a lot of great technology out there, but how much of that, you know, is really good, and how much of that is maybe an overkill too?
I think you know, I have nothing against the guys with the cell cameras and stuff. I mean, I use cameras religiously, but I'm using the old style. So, and sometimes I wrestle with myself with whether or not I should use them, but I am confident enough of my own woodsmanship skills so I understand what I'm actually seeing with these cameras. A lot of these guys are relying on these cameras, not everybody, you know, but some of the guys are relying on the cameras, and they're not using their woodsmanship skills to correlate what they're seeing to what's actually going on. And that can be a detriment at some point, you know. And I think that's why a lot of states are making laws to go along with these cell cameras. So I just wish that if you're going to use this technology, you use it in conjunction with your woodsmanship skills. But we're seeing that a lot of this technology is made specifically to eliminate that and make it easier on you by using it. Is that something you think, or am I barking up the wrong apple tree?
I very definitely think that it does. There's so many new, you know, products and new technology that makes hunting so much easier all the way around. And yet, you know, some people who just loved, pure hunters who loved a Larry Benoit, who he hunted just for the pure love of getting out and tracking a deer in the snow. And if he was on that track for 6 hours or 8 hours, or had to, you know, leave off at dark and come back the next morning, I mean, that's what he lived for. And that to me is pure hunting. And I think if you ask 100 deer hunters what their idea of hunting is, you probably get 100 different answers.
Oh, I agree.
And so, you know, to one person, you know, the traditional always may be what he loves to do. To the younger guy coming along today, you know, so using all this high tech stuff, and not only the cameras, but, you know, I had a guy show me not too long ago. He has an app on his phone that plots everywhere he goes to hunt. It plots the piece of property on there, and it shows him exactly where he is on that property. And so if he's hunting on public land, it'll show him, if he's 5 feet from the boundary line, it'll beep and show him, you know, you're almost off the property.
Yeah.
And things like that. And that can be a great help. But I think, to me, I'm sort of a dinosaur. I like just going out in the woods and hunting, and whatever's there is there, you know. And you find sign from a big buck, you find the tracks, you find scrapes and rubs, or maybe even see a big buck. And, you know, 1 or 2 trail cameras, you put them out and you hope to get some pictures. But some of these guys, I mean, have 50 trail cameras out all the time, and everything they do is predicated on all this knowledge that they're constantly accumulating and on the deer. And, a lot of the Midwestern hunters in places like Iowa, these farms, I mean, they know every single buck on that piece of property. They got names for every one of them.
Yeah.
And I mean, if that's the way you like to hunt, that's great. But to me, I would rather go into a good place, a promising place, cold turkey, and do my homework as a hunter, through my skills, you
Mhm.
know, find where that buck is, the creek bottom that buck is going through, and set up a stand and, hunt that deer, and not have I just don't need all that stuff. And so, um, I think it can be good and it can be bad.
I'll have my cameras out to see a specific buck that I've found by doing my scouting to see if he's what I think he is. But most of my hunting is done by old woodsmanship skills, knowing where the draws are, where they're crossing, where they're feeding, where they're watering. And it just seems ironic to me that I can use this new technology to help new landowners or old landowners that just don't understand the concept and help them. My whole thing is I want to help people and make sure that they're successful. I've been fairly successful in what I do, and I'm hoping that will transfer over, but I see the dark side of these things, and sometimes they can be really bad. I mean, we're talking people getting their perception of what they're seeing is so off, or their understanding of, okay, so you live in Illinois in the Golden Triangle or whatever they call it, and your soil is like what Don has. He was telling me that he doesn't have to fertilize the soil only so often, and he doesn't have to worry about lime. Where we are, we're in a pretty rough part of the country. So people don't understand that, yeah, we're getting bigger bucks here in New Hampshire, but on average, you're not going to be seeing 150 class bucks every day. So sometimes this technology can help you to get a pretty realistic understanding of what you have, and kind of get that in your head. But I think that a lot of people see these shows from Midwest and they think that's what they've got here in New England, and it's just not true. And a lot of these commercial TV shows they don't explain that to people, that it's like this is escapism for hunters to watch people shooting 180-inch bucks on TV. I mean, yes, we've all had some pretty big bucks in our lives, but in Georgia, I'm pretty sure that you're not going to go out on your back 40 and shoot a 200-inch whitetail every year, and neither are we up here. So I hope that people understand these things, and I think there's some people that don't get that correlation. So,
Yeah. Well, I think that's so true. And I guess, people in New England, I guess, have to understand that in Vermont, if you shoot a 140, that's a beautiful deer. And in fact, in most places, if you shoot a 140,
mm-hmm.
that's a great deer. In South Carolina, if you shoot a 130, I mean, and there's some great hunting in South Carolina. They have so many deer. They have a very early deer season, and yet very, to see a 150 class buck in South Carolina is a very rare thing. It just doesn't happen that much. But one of the real pluses that I've seen in recent years, in hunting, has been people buying their own land. People are going in, like guys, hunters, 2 or 3 guys going in, buying their own piece of property in places like Illinois where they want to manage and try to grow some really nice deer over the years. And that, I think that trend really started kind of back maybe in the 90s and into the 2000s. There was a lot of interest in real estate and going into the Midwest places like Illinois. And I think, Jeff Brown of New England Big Bucks,
Yep.
Northeast Big Buck Club.
Yeah, NBBC.
Years ago, I think 10, 12 years ago, he and some guys bought a piece of a tract in Illinois, and they've been managing, and they've killed some really nice deer. But the great thing about doing that is the people who do that and can afford to do that is they are doing so many great things for all wildlife, not just deer and turkeys that they like to hunt. but they're improving the property. They're planting food plots. Planting trees. And so all the wildlife benefits from that piece of property being improved. And so many people have done that around the country in different places. And that has really been a big plus for wildlife in general.
Yep. And that's one of the reasons, that was one of the other reasons we did this, because Dr. Kroll said something to me that really stuck. And he said he's never improved a property for whitetails that hasn't benefited other wildlife. And I found that to be pretty poignant. And I looked at that and I says, that makes complete sense, because there's a cycle while you're doing it that's helping everything. So I took that to heart when we decided to do this. And really, when we do a property, when we look at a property, we're not just looking at whitetails, although that's our main focus. We're looking at bear, we're looking at woodcock, we're looking at grouse, and trying to make a balance for the whole property and improve it. So, and what did he say? Dr. Kroll said, I asked him about genetics, and he said, well, I look at it this way. There's some things you can control and there's some things you can't. He says you can control the food, you can control the water and all these other things, but you can't control the genetics. So do what you can, and it's going to help everything in the long run. So that's what we're going to do. And I think that's some of the good stuff that's happened, is like you're talking about, is it the way I look at it is like there's that Midwestern property management type of thing, like Don Higgins and those guys are doing, that it bleeds over, not just for deer, but for wildlife in general. And it's happening countrywide. It's not just happening out west or in the south or mid coast, or it's happening everywhere. And it's starting to show, in so many things. I mean, look at the turkeys in New England. That's a Cinderella story without a doubt, that we almost had we had no turkeys back when I was a kid. And when I got into my 20s, all of a sudden there's turkeys everywhere. And the turkey hunting here in New England, I would put it up against any state in the union as being that good. Not that I want the secret to get out, because I kind of like hunting turkeys without a lot of pressure. But
well, that's very special because, in many states right now, especially in Georgia, particularly, turkey populations have really plummeted in the last few years. And our season this year, starting 2 weeks later, and they reduced the limit. We've always had a 3 gobbler limit, and this year it's going to be 2 gobbler limit. And most people that understand the problem are only shooting 1 gobbler anyway. They're not trying to go out there and kill 3 gobblers.
yeah,
There was a 3 gobbler limit, because everybody wants. That's the thing about hunters. When there's a problem, they want to solve the problem. They'll pitch in and do their share. And if it takes not killing any turkeys, they'll do that for a while. But there's a serious thing going on right now with turkey populations really being depleted. And I guess most people think it's the predators that are out there, and a lot of land use changes that are taking place for habitat changes. But maybe they'll get a grip on it. Maybe we'll see. I hate to see. I mean, yeah, we've had places in Georgia we had places that were just covered up with turkeys, and now you're lucky to see one. So,
yeah, which it's strange, because with all the land management that goes on all over the place, you would think that. I mean, I'm not familiar with Georgia all very much at all. Just what I see on certain TV shows, NWTF or something, and I'd always pictured Georgia as being a turkey mecca, a place where you really had a great turkey population. And do they have a handle at all on what's going on? Do they kind of got an idea?
I think right now I think they're looking at bear populations have increased, coyote populations have increased tremendously, other bobcats and other predators. And then just loss of habitat in places. But I think the predators, raccoons, raccoon populations have increased because nobody's trapping raccoons like they used to. So those raccoons get in, they'll find a nest, and they eat every egg in that nest. And so I think, there are a lot of theories as to what's happening and why the populations have been so depressed and so depleted. But we have in North Georgia, it's funny, we have a very diverse state, and the northern one third of our state gets into the low Appalachian Mountains. And
Yep.
so the terrain is very much like New England, and the mountains running through New England. And so we have some great mountain country. And then as you get down below the mountains, you have the plateau, Pine Woods Plateau country, and then you have the coastal plain. And there were years ago, like you, when I was growing up, there were places in Georgia where there were a lot of turkeys. There always had been, like along the coast in places. But they restocked a lot of turkeys in places where they had been depleted. And then suddenly the populations were just mushrooming. And, we had almost every county in the state of Georgia had great turkey populations. You could go just about anywhere and hunt and see turkeys. And so you just took it for granted, really, that they'd always be here. And, speaking of people, when they improve their land for deer, it always improves the land for turkeys too. It helps the turkeys out when they're planting, because those turkeys benefit for a lot of things that people do for deer on
Hmm.
planting food plots and open areas and things like that. So, um, everybody's concerned about the drop in the population, but hopefully we'll be able to get a handle on it and, see some improvements in the next few years.
It seems like the common denominator. I mean, we've had much to the chagrin of the animal rights activists here in New England. I'm going to say this: we've had a population boom with bobcats. In New Hampshire, especially, they say that they're almost extinct and we can't have a hunting season. Not the Fish and Game Department, but this outfit, these nutty professors of animal rights. They think that we can't have a bobcat season because there's not enough of them. Well, I can tell you, in the last 3 trips I've taken out shed hunting, which is another bone to pick with them, I've seen 3 bobcats. In the old days, when I was in my early 20s, if you saw a bobcat, you were on your knees hailing to God that you saw a bobcat, because it was that
I think
rare.
that's true. That's so true just about anywhere. And I've been very fortunate in my hunting experiences. I've seen quite a few bobcats in the woods, but every time I've seen one, it's been just an amazing experience for me, because they are so secretive and so remote. You very seldom ever see them in the woods.
Yeah, the one I saw the other day was I have my cattle dog as my shed dog, and he's around 60 pounds. This male bobcat that we saw matched him in frame and size. I don't know about weight, but it was almost the size of my cattle dog. So they're healthy and they're big. And a bobcat that size can easily take a deer or a turkey without
Yeah.
any issues. Um, so I'm wondering if I don't know about how your bobcat population is, but if you're seeing an increase, that could be an issue. And of course, the almighty coyote, who basically is taking over the reins from every other predator, it seems.
Well, that is, the coyotes have really, yeah, they're the number one probably predator that has increased just exponentially, in numbers across Georgia. And so I mean, they're taking fawns, a lot of fawns now, and a lot of turkeys and turkey nests. And so, uh, yeah, they're definitely part of the problem. But our
And
bear population has really increased in recent years.
as I always say, the coyote has its place. It really is the garbage man of the woods. It cleans up a lot of stuff, and it does keep a lot of populations, as long as their population is in check. They have a good usage, and I know a lot of people are going to blast me for that, but the problem is they're the ultimate predator. These critters have really adapted to surviving. So, I mean, I don't know what the answer is to it. I don't think there is one. We just have to do our best to keep them in check. And they're going to eat. So I'm not sure what the answer is on that. I really don't have an answer, I guess, but they are enviable, one of the best predators that we have in the North American continent.
Oh,
As far as
they're amazing. They're amazing animals. They really are.
So you can hate them. You can hate them all you want, but they've done what they were going to do. So we're here. We're well over time what I thought we would be. That's how it is every time you and I get together. We just let it go. So
I know we can keep going forever.
Oh, that's true. Is there anything else that you have in mind that you'd like to hit on before we
One thing I
wrap this
wanted
up?
to ask you, we've seen so many just incredible changes in mostly in technology in the last 20 years since about 2000. All the so many things have come into the marketplace, and now here we are in 2022. What do you think deer hunting is going to be like in another 20 years? What kind of changes do you see coming in 20 years and in 50 years?
Ooh, 20 years. I'm going to say that we're going to see more regulation without a doubt on certain things. And I think that they're going to try to do some sneaky stuff, such as right now we're seeing where whitetails are a natural reservoir for COVID-19, supposedly. They found this out to be in Canada, I guess. My wife's looking at me like I shouldn't be saying it, but it's out there, so I'm going to say it. I'm going to see that they're going to try to use that to try to slow or regulate deer hunting, maybe. I'm seeing that they're going to come up with different ideas for CWD, why we can't do one thing or another. And as it's going now in the country, like we were talking about with younger hunters, I almost think we're going to see, unless we can do something to help, maybe a drop off in certain parts of the country of whitetail hunting, or hunting in general. As far as technology goes, at some point, some smart aleck legislator is going to try to make it so it's legal to hunt with drones. Even though we've fought against that. And on the other hand, there could be some good stuff too. There could be, people like Dr. Kroll and Dr. Strickland, guys like that in the science field that are really pushing for nutritional updates and things like that in the States. We may actually see something good come of some of those things that they're working on and help. And another thing I see within the 20 or 50 years, and I talked to James Smith. He's the president of the New Hampshire Trophy Antler and Skull. Did I say it wrong again? I can never get that right. Basically, our records keepers here in the state. He thinks that our state record will be broken within the next 2 to 5 years. We're seeing a huge boom in Boone and Crockett bucks and just large rack bucks in general in the state. Not that I want that to get out, because I like how many hunters we have now coming here. And I think that's pretty much what we're looking at. I mean, there could be some new updates and scent technology that actually works, because some of the scent technology that we have now that claims to eliminate your scent is just a commercial farce as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't work. Maybe we'll come up with something that does. And if that happens, the game changes completely, because now you can just hunt and you don't have to worry about the wind. But
oh yeah, that would be amazing. One thing quickly I would like to say is, and you sort of touched on it a little bit, but one of the things that I see that is so troubling to me, in our world, the world we live in today, there's so much corruption in government, and it's almost gotten to the point now where when young people, view our government. When I was growing up, the Russians were the bad guys. And we always compared, well, look at the United States. We're on this pedestal, we're on this shining hill, and because we're the good guys and we always do the right thing. But the Russians, they're communists and they're always doing the wrong thing, and they're hurting people. And in recent years, we've seen we've just about turned into some of our political system has turned into Russia, basically. We're doing the same thing that they've always done. And I hate to see that with our young people. I think we need to work so hard to try to teach our young people, whether it's hunting or just life in general, some integrity, honesty, and understanding of that this is not the way things should be.
Hmm.
That we need to get back to a system where we trust our government, and when they not lying to us all the time. I mean, they have told so many lies in recent years, and that really troubles me, especially with young people, because young people get so complacent and they just think it's just common. Everybody's corrupt, so what are they gonna do when they grow up? Are they gonna be the same way? They're gonna do the same thing?
Yeah.
So I think we need to work hard at correcting that.
I mean, I'm not. I'm younger than you are. I'm not that much younger, but I'm younger, and I I used to picture the world as black and white. You know, the good guys, the bad guys, and like you said, everything's so corrupt now. That line is so blurred, and the information you get is so skewed. You don't know what's true and what's not. And as far as the corruption goes, you'll see it's okay. So to put it kind of in a hunting light, so maybe some of the guys who are watching this can understand it, is in our state, my wife and I have a lot to do with reading legislation and getting it out there as informational so people know what they're doing. And one of the things that we find is any type of anti-hunting or animal rights groups or any type of special interest that is opposed to traditional either lifestyles or hunting or whatever, they have the money and they have people who are either paid or they volunteer to constantly come bombard us with frivolous laws and everything. And if we don't keep an eye on it, our legislators are led to believe by these people that it's the will of the people to do these things. And I'm a working guy. And most hunters that I know are blue collar working guys, and they don't have the time or the luxury to be able to follow this all the time. But these people, carte blanche, can go to every legislative meeting. They get paid to do it. They have money backing them. They have people to write legislation for them through places like HSUS and PETA and all these. And we don't have the backing for it. And whether or not these politicians are being fed money, which I'm not insinuating, I'm point blank saying that there's no way that they're not, because that's how politicians work, period, that they get paid to vote a certain way to keep that money coming and flowing.
Yeah, in my book, it's interesting you mentioned that, because in my book, Art Rilling and His Game Ranch, for years and years, he operated kind of by the seat of his pants. I mean, he had all these animals, and people thought very highly of him because he had great veterinarians that took care of the animals when they were sick and things like that. And nobody ever questioned his abusing the animals or anything like that. But I guess in the early 90s, when PETA, I think PETA started in the late 80s or sometime 87, 88, sometime. They started coming out to the game ranch and filing these complaints. And it got worse and worse as the years went by. Things would happen. And then in getting into the early 2000s, I mean, they almost made life impossible for him. And they would, just exactly what you say, they had paid people on the payroll that were coming out, groups, not just one person, but there'd be like 5 women would come out, and they would, they would just sneak around, and if any little thing, that if a cage was dirty, if it had just been cleaned out, but it got dirty again, they would file complaints, and and politicians do listen to a lot of those complaints. And so that was a real problem. That was, an ongoing problem that he had in later years.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Yeah,
still out there today. And
these guys, they're relentless. I mean, they have the money backing them by huge money groups, donations. Um, and I know Diane's over here getting ready to edit everything, and that's another symptom of our culture right now is being careful what you say. But in Vermont right now, for your information, there's a group over there called what do they call it? No, she doesn't want me to say it. There's a group over there who's paid an agitator to follow coyote hunters that hunt with dogs, to follow them around and agitate and film them and harass them. This is the stuff that they do. Now, if we did this to somebody from PETA, we followed him everywhere in his little Bronx, New York place and filmed him and took pictures of him, we'd have the police down our throat telling us that we're harassing somebody. But because of these people with the money and lawyers, they get away with it. And this is what we're dealing with as hunters in our country is we're the bad guys. We have no protections basically. And these people have the money to get away with it because they grease somebody's palm to make sure that they can slide away from any accusations we make. And that's the part we have to really deal with. And there's no big money backing us. The Koch brothers aren't backing us. God bless him, Donald Trump's not backing us, anything like that. We don't have that financial backing to fight these people. The only way we can fight them is to be active and to go to your legislative meetings and your fish and game meetings and be vocal. That's all we have. And it's almost sometimes like you're fighting a giant with a toothpick. It's really hard. Luckily, one of the things that people need to realize when you're dealing with these kind of things is you have to pick your battle. If you have a Democrat legislature in the House and the Senate in your state level, don't bring laws for hunting rights. Don't bring laws to make, hunting easier or better for you. Wait until you have the majority, whether it's Republican or independent, people who support your rights, because otherwise you're wasting the money. And in New Hampshire, it's my wife will correct me if I'm wrong, but it's $1,000 to write legislation for each bill. So don't waste that money when you know you can't win.
That's good advice. That's so true.
It's like Sun Tzu. You pick your battlefield. If you don't pick your battlefield where you want to do it and when you want to do it, you're going to lose. That's just common sense. So my wife wants me to wrap this up because she says we're wrapping too much today. So, but it's true. We have a lot ahead of us. We're pushing a boulder up a mountain.
Well, you're doing a great job, and thank you so much for what you do, because people like you, if we didn't have you out there fighting the fights and making people aware of what's going on, then we'd be a lot worse off. So thank you.
Thank you for being with us today and for becoming what I consider a friend. So, and on another note, we are working diligently on your painting. So we've done a lot of research.
Oh, well, I know those things take time, so I can't wait. But I'll be excited to see it.
Well, I'm hoping that it lives up to your expectations. We will hopefully have it to you. I'm hoping by summer. So that's the point. That's our goal right now. I'm hoping maybe you'll get it by the time I see that new book come out. So on that note, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you and find your books and your publisher and all that, and we'll wrap that up.
Well, they can call me directly. I guess maybe you could get my phone number and put it on the screen. I don't really have a website, but my books, Dawn of American Deer Hunting, was published by Sporting Classics magazine in Columbia, South Carolina. They're very easy to find, and they have they carry a lot of my books. They sell a lot of great outdoor books. They have a huge book department. They sell a lot of books. They publish a lot of books. but they also sell a lot of other writers' books too.
Yeah.
So they're doing a great job in the book end as far as outdoor books. So Sporting Classics is a great way, or just by directly contacting me, and I can give you my email address and my phone number, and maybe we could put it on the screen.